Rainbow Fun Palace. That's what it was called. It was one of those knockoff Chuck E. Cheese joints. It was cheaper too, so lazy parents could ignore their child for half the price. Imagine that, what a steal. The place was awful though. It reeked of sweat and tears. Likely the tears of the kids brought there. You see, no child actually liked Rainbow Fun Palace. Maybe it was the bad pizza. Maybe it was the fact that they never cleaned the ball pit. It could have been the bad ticket prizes, or the fact that half of the arcade machines never worked. Each one of the workers always looked like they'd much rather be somewhere else. Somewhere that maybe smelled a little better. Personally, I think it was Giggles. Giggles was a rumor at best. Parents said that he was one of the clowns that worked there, hired on to entertain the kids. However, it was widely known that there was no Giggles. At least not a living one. A lot of the kids claimed to see glances of him out of the corner of their eye. Whenever they'd ask their parents about it, they'd just shrug it off. Maybe Giggles isn't working today. He could be out sick, they would say with mock enthusiasm. Most kids knew better. Every kid in my neighborhood agrees that he was a ghost. A lot of stories about Giggles were made up. The general consensus between the teenagers and the older kids was that Giggles worked at Rainbow Fun Palace back when it first opened, when it was shiny and new. However, when the place started to fall apart, he became depressed and eventually hung himself in the basement. The younger ones didn't know exactly what that meant, but they knew what a ghost was, and it was enough to make any kid hate visiting. There were a few kids that happened to see Giggles up close, as in an eye-to-eye encounter. They seemed off after that. Unfortunately, I was one of those kids. I was about 8 and my mother had taken me and my sister to Rainbow Fun Palace for a friend's birthday party. No one really seemed enthused to be there, and the parents had become irritated when we brought up Giggles the ghost. Stupid, they would call it. We didn't think so. That's when I saw him, not out of the corner of my eye, but standing at the back doorway, which was usually closed with a sign reading, "Employees only," on the door. It was horrifying. Its head was too big and his outfit was tattered and dirty. My curiosity got the best of me as I trailed off from the uneasy group of 8-year-olds and followed Giggles through the back door. It was dark back there and completely silent, besides the low rumble of children playing outside. Then, a grunt came from the darkness. He stepped out from the shadows, and horror overcame me. His head was huge. The skin on his face was disgusting, and although I heard the grunts continue, his mouth stayed frozen in a smile that would haunt my nightmares for years to come. I don't know why, but I passed out. I woke later in the ball pit, feeling wrong and sick, and I made sure that my mother never took me there again. This seems like it might be the end of the story, but it isn't. Over the years, I did my best to forget about the incident, but that frozen smile stayed with me. I reached adulthood mostly without trouble. I did okay in school and eventually found a good job after graduation. My sister also did well. She had kids and life went on. And I started to forget about my time at Rainbow Fun Palace. But it wasn't over. My niece turned 10 last year, and my stomach dropped when my sister called me to let me know that they'd be having her birthday party at Rainbow Fun Palace. I considered not going, but I love my niece and I knew it would break her heart if I bailed. I grabbed her the latest Barbie doll house and went. gritting my teeth as I walked through the door and remembered that awful smell. I sat at one of the tables designated for adults, silently staring off into space, internally reliving every nightmare I'd ever had about that place. Out of the corner of my eye, I thought I saw him, but I told myself I was just imagining. Everyone eventually grew up to know that Giggles wasn't real, but none of them saw him. Not like I did. Something rose in me just then, mostly anger. I was told my whole life that something I experienced wasn't real. I decided, then and there, that I was going to try and get a picture of Giggles and prove to them that he was real. I grabbed my phone and snuck off undetected. I slipped through the same back door, and it was just as dark as I remembered. It was still light enough, though, that I could see a shelf nearby that I could hide behind. I stood there for a while before hearing someone shuffle past. I saw that door open, and there he was. I stifled the urge to run as I watched him back away from the door into the shadows, a small child I didn't know following behind. As the door slowly closed, I prepared to jump from behind the shelf, grab the kid, when a simple light clicked on above Giggles. He looked just like I remembered him, but somehow more unreal. The room seemed different then too. It wasn't some empty, hellish nightmare room. It was a small, cluttered office. The light was just dim enough that I was still concealed in the shadows. What happened next changed everything. Giggles raised his hands and put them on the sides of his gigantic, terrifying head. He lifted it to reveal the real horror. A man, much older and very dirty. He grunted, reached for the zipper on the front of his clown suit and mumbled, "Take off your pants." The child looked horrified, frozen in absolute fear. "Do it, or I'll tell your parents." My stomach turned, not only with those words, but with the realization my whole childhood had been compromised and I hadn't even known it. Rainbow Fun Palace wasn't haunted by a ghost. It was the home of a pedophile.